Right, good morning everyone. Welcome to Fundraising Talk, a weekly webinar hosted by Melanie Jackson and myself, Kelvin Glenn. We generally try and bring in expert speakers every alternate week on subject matters. And we've got an expert this morning that's going to be sharing some wonderful stuff with us, which Melanie will introduce shortly. Some house rules for those of you that haven't been on the call before. We try and stick to time. We'll be finished by 11. We do record this whole session and we will send the recording on the WhatsApp group. We have a WhatsApp group for those of you that don't know about that. It's called Fundraising Talk. If you want to be added, contact Melanie or myself and we will add you. It is a WhatsApp group for this tribe of fundraisers and people in the NPO sector to share knowledge, events, experience, best practice, etc., etc. Some housekeeping for this particular webinar. There is a chat facility. If you look at your bar, there's a chat facility. If you have questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat. And also if we can start as we set things up and get going, if you can just introduce yourselves and where you're from in the sense of, hi, I'm Kelvin, I'm from Joburg. Just so we have an idea, we can see names, we're not sure where everyone's from and what organizations they were working with. In the chat, absolutely. You will remain muted during the call. We will unmute you when we come to Q&A. Please make sure we stay muted because we don't want to hear dogs barking and kids asking homework questions.
Sorry.
So without further ado, because of time, I'm going to hand over to Melanie to introduce our guest speaker and our subject matter for today.
Thanks so much, Calvin. I hope you can hear me over the rain that is thundering on the roof at the moment. I am so excited to welcome Samantha Barnard to our little group today. Sam and I have been trying to connect for several years, so I'm really excited that we finally have got to do that and that we're finally working together on a project. Sam is the Deputy Director of Pambano Technology Development Center, NPC. That's quite a mouthful.
Yep.
Pambano is good, yeah?
Yep. Pambano
so
Tech, anything.
Awesome. She lives in Somerset West, which is just around the corner from me in Bloberg. And since starting, just around the corner, since she started her social media marketing and blogging career in early 2007, she's worked with Google South Africa, Sango Tech, iStore, Red Bull, Vodacom, the lovely advocate Tuli Madonsela, I'm very jealous, Overall Events, Facebook, Microsoft, and the list goes on. So Sam is our tech guru in two easy words, and I'm really excited to hear what she has to say about what's happening in the tech space in South Africa and abroad.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to check, Calvin, are you going to share the presentation slides? We don't have many.
No, I'll put them up right now.
Okay, cool. So good morning, everybody. Some of you know me, some of you don't. Yes, it's Samantha on my email signature, but a lot of you refer to me as Sam. I'm not a man, I'm a woman. If you're seeing me for the first time and you've been confused about that, here I am. Yes, I'm better known for the TechSoup South Africa program in terms of being a part of that support team. Many of you deal with a lot of my colleagues that are on the call for your donated or your discounted software. And we as Pambano Tech make up a part of the TechSoup Global Network. And every morning we get up, we try and assist the NGO landscape with software donations or discounts. We want to help you save some money. But then my core passion and also my colleague Dai, who's on the team, we really want to help you understand the tools available, how to use them, and then also explore some online safety as well when it comes to your software and your tech systems. So in the background there, you can see the TechSoup logo. For those of you that have got partners or NGOs in any other country across the globe, and you would like to help them get access to discounted or donated software, just Google TechSoup and you'll be able to find a partner like us in each country and each region. So Pambano, for those of you that don't know, in Chivenda means make a difference. We do not mean the isiXhosa version, which means to argue or to make a fight. We don't want you to argue with your tech. We want to make a difference with you and your technology when it comes to your nonprofit company, trust, library, school, church, anything related to social impact and your community around you. So if you could just go to the next slide for me, please, Calvin. Cool. Now, just maybe not so much housekeeping rules or just a little bit of an intro from me. I am going to overwhelm you all during this next 45 minutes, okay? I know that a lot of what I say, a lot of the words that I use when it comes to technology, it is incredibly overwhelming. I want you to remember that I've been in this industry for many, many years, and I can talk about it quite freely. I've also done a lot of certification. I've got a lot of experience, and the expectation is not for you to know exactly what I'm saying when I'm saying it. The expectation and my goal at the end of this is just to plant a couple of seeds of thought with you when it comes to tech and your systems that you have, and then also give you the opportunity to then walk a journey with us where we can take you step by step at your own pace. So you'll note that our slides have got sort of 2-word prompts on it. It's because I know it's very overwhelming when I talk, but don't be discouraged. If at any point I say something that you don't understand, put it into the chat, and Di and myself and Melanie and Kelvin, we will definitely be able to do some hand-holding with you to walk you through this at your own pace. So today's topic, which is, using technology in the time of crisis. And for most of us, it is COVID-19. But I also want you to keep in the back of your mind, crisis could be no funding. Crisis could be an act of God. Some people have got storms at the moment. Your office may be flooded. It could be an earthquake. It could be a fire. Times of crisis could be what we're seeing at the moment in the GBV landscape, where people have sort of gone quiet all of a sudden. We had this massive big campaign about, gender-based violence, and now not many people are talking about it. And when I talk about using tech in a time of crisis, I want you to think of it not just during COVID or not just during lockdown or a pandemic, but in all areas of the what ifs and what could happen. And in my opinion, and the sort of approach that we take, is that your number one starting point when considering your tech and crisis is data protection. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of examples as to why this is important and how some other nonprofits have used it to their benefit, or maybe they've been bitten slightly. And you can hear the hardy dars in the background, apologies. But I really want to walk you through this at your own pace. So again, a reminder to please send me your questions or just take down some notes and contact us at any point when you are ready to look at this properly. Many of you think of data protection in terms of your email, your backup for your email, your website backup, or maybe just your lever arch files in your offices. You know, that big filing cabinet that you have where you keep all your grants and your proposals and your M&E and whatnot. And as much as what that is a part of data protection, it is not the important part of data protection. The important part of data protection links to your beneficiaries, your stakeholders, and your donors. Do many of you, or do all of you remember the Australian wildfire emergency that happened in the beginning of this year? I mean, 2020 has been so long that it's hard to believe it only happened at the beginning of this year. And, after this call, I'd like you to Google the comedian in Australia that raised, I think it was over $56 million on behalf of a charity that she nominated for the fundraising. And I want you to look at the court case that enveloped after that. Money came in, how Facebook were pulled into the court case as well, and how the judge ultimately decided that the beneficiaries that she chose to do the fundraising for could not receive any of that funding. Purely because when you really read into the data, the trust had not set up their parameters correctly in order to disperse the funds. So when we're talking about data protection, it's also about your systems and your policies. It's how people donate to you. It's when they donate to you. And most importantly, if someone does donate to you, what are your boundaries and your parameters for that funding? You need to start thinking of your data protection from that point of view. Once you've looked at it from that point of view, you then look at the tech tools that you have be it your social media, your website, some of your cloud-based technologies, to then get your operations going day to day. You know, where are you storing your M&E framework in your office? Is it in that LibreArch file? Or are you submitting it to an online portal that your website or your NGO owns? And so your data protection from that point of view is not just your program data, but your staff data, your board data, anything to do with the people in your organization, and then all your digital properties. So your digital properties for your organization is like your website. Who actually owns your domain? Have you looked into that to see if all of a sudden crisis strikes and the internet shuts down in South Africa, what are your resources available very quickly to be able to access your own physical domain and put it onto another network so it could still be visible to the rest of the world? Now, at this point, I know I've overwhelmed a lot of you. And again, just a reminder, I will talk you through this at your own pace and help give you some access to resources, you know, after the call, just so that you can get onto the same page as me, because these are often things that NGOs don't consider because they just don't know to consider it. Now, going back to what I was saying about data protection with your boards, I'm sure many of you have got old boards. And by that, I mean you've got members on your boards that are old in age. And I'm sure many of you have got board members that do not know how to update or back up their email. And as a board member, and maybe somebody that helps you with your fundraising, they've got 25, 35 years of emails sitting on their email, sort of information-wise, that they want to keep. What happens in a time of crisis when that board member decides to leave your organization? Does that data belong to your organization, or does that data belong to the board member? These are sort of questions and conversations that you need to have internally, not just with your board, but most importantly with your fundraisers. Because, you know, as Fundraising Talk tells everybody, you are the front line of your organization when it comes to bringing money in. And there's no point in going out there to donors and, you know, trying to get funding in, trying to get gifts of kind in, and there's no data protection in the back end to help you sustain that relationship, even if you move to another organization, or if that donor increases their capacity and introduces you to other donors in the field. So the term data protection has got many, many different arms to it and branches. And it is one that is the most important, okay, when it comes to how do we look at our tech and our systems in preparation for a crisis. The most important thing when it comes to data protection, in my opinion, and it's something that I'm seeing happen quite a bit online, which I'm very, very confused about in the NGO landscape, is your beneficiaries. So if we take COVID, for example, and a lot of NGOs are distributing food parcels, and we can even correlate it to the faith-based landscape, so churches and that sort. Schools at the moment, they're also non-profits, many of them, and their beneficiaries are children or parents. And then we have a look at communities where, you know, gender-based violence is on the rise. How many of you could open up Facebook today and see the faces of the beneficiaries that are in incredibly vulnerable situations that people are donating to them? And I want you to think of data protection from that point of view. You know, those beneficiaries, be it that they are homeless or be it that they are children that have gone through a traumatic time because now there's this COVID and now they must go back to school. You know, even if their parents give permission for their photos to be out in the world, showcasing them walking with their shields on and their masks on, is it really okay for us as a landscape to show that from a data point of view? These are the types of conversations I believe the landscape needs to have, because we do have acts like GDPR, and we do have acts like POPI, which, you know, prevents us from, in one sentence, taking each other's personal information and selling it to a corporate or to another place that would then use your information for either M&E, sales, or some research. Your data, your email, your cell phone number, your age, your health records, all of that is protected by laws and it's governed by laws. And what are we doing as nonprofits when it comes to our beneficiaries that we are serving that are in very, very vulnerable situations in terms of showcasing them out to the global world on our social media? So if anything from this call, if I can just plant that seed of really have a look at the impact of how you are distributing your data, and that could also mean your M&E. How are you telling your story online? How are you telling your story to your board? How are you housing that data? And what are you doing to protect it? Okay. Now, tech tools available for you is number one, the cloud. Every single nonprofit, business, person, corporate, municipality, government will be on the cloud in the next couple of years. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. It doesn't really matter if you have Wi-Fi or if you don't. It doesn't matter if you have an updated laptop or a smartphone. It doesn't matter. You will be porting onto the cloud purely based by the organizations that make the software, okay? So your number one data protection tool is to very quickly start researching the cloud. I'm not saying adopt it, I'm saying research it. Learn how to drive this vehicle. And for those of you that have got a board that are very scared of the cloud, if even you yourself, if you're scared of it, this very call that we're having is cloud technology. Zoom is the cloud. Facebook is the cloud. WhatsApp is the cloud. Okay, every single technology that we use, be it from internet banking to Canva, if those of you are using Canva to create graphics, you are using cloud-based programs to do your work and to fulfill your operations. So if ever there's anybody in your organization that is very skeptical of the cloud and very scared, just very politely promote to them and remind them that they're already using cloud-based technologies. And if the team comes together and investigates it properly, your journey to going onto the cloud fully will be an easy one. And the reason why I say that is because I don't want any NGO to be left behind. Let's face it, if you're in fundraising, technically your competition, be it in a sales field, is the other NGO in another area that does exactly the same as you. We are all trying to do the same thing, trying to get the same types of funding in and trying to solve the same problem. You don't want something like your tech in your nonprofit to hold you back from somebody else in your landscape. If they have the ability to adopt to something like the cloud, which many donors are now utilizing for M&E and for communication and whatnot, it's in your best interest to investigate it and see which one suits your organization the best. Now, through the TechSoup program, there are 2 cloud technologies that you can get for free. The first is Office 365, which is owned by Microsoft. Microsoft are doing away with their on-premise software so that your Office Standard, your Access, your PowerPoint, all those back in the day used to buy the CD, load the CD onto your computer. That's all being done away with now. If you want to have an updated operations system, you need to go onto Office 365. They do give NGOs, eligible NGOs, that is, up to 10 free licenses, and through TechSoup, we can assist you with that. The other cloud-based technology, which you can get for free, is Google, G Suite. Many of you are familiar with the G Suite platform. You're using it free, and there is a way that you can access their pro version for free, which we can also help you with through the TechSoup program. Over and above that, when it comes to your backup for data protection, you do need to have a system in place or an IT person to assist you, or even somebody on your team that can help you once a week or once a month physically back up your technology and your data. The reason why I say this is because let's say you go onto Microsoft Cloud and 3 days down the line, some crisis happens and there is no more Microsoft. We never know what could happen. I mean, COVID has taught us that literally anything can happen at any given time. What happens if you're on Facebook and you're spending a lot of time on your Facebook page, and tomorrow Zuckerberg says, I'm closing down Facebook, and there goes your page. it is always advisable that even if you've got technology that does those things for you, like cloud-based systems that do automatic backups, something as simple as an external hard drive, a tool like Veritas, and just an IT person to be able to physically help you do that will stand you in good stead, because you will have an additional backup should something happen to the software that you're using. Okay, so that's me for data protection. Calvin, if you could please go to the next one. Online fundraising. And just as a quick note, all the images that you see on the back of this presentation is from the TechSoup Global Summit that took place in San Francisco last year. Myself and Arnold, we were very honored to be able to go. And a lot of the people that you see on the slides are your tech donors. They're the actual people at Microsoft, at PayPal, at Zoom, at Google. It was in a room with us, and they could hear us say to them, you know, this is what South Africa is challenged with. This is what fundraisers are looking for in terms of tools. So I just wanted to highlight that I promise you there are faces behind technology, and there's a huge team globally to help you if your NGO needs it. So online fundraising in the time of crisis. I think all of you have really had to get into gear when it comes to using online fundraising. And the seed that I'm wanting to plant during this session is that online fundraising is not Facebook, okay? Online fundraising is not crowdfunding. Online fundraising is your website. Online fundraising is who you are in your personal capacity online. It doesn't matter if you have a beautiful Facebook page and you spend a lot of money on ads, or you come up with campaigns and you change your cover photo. If a donor or a CSI department that has been Googling an organization like yours cannot find you on Google, you do not exist to them. If a CSI department or an international funder is looking for your website and goes onto it and cannot see who your board is, they do not trust you. It's as simple as that. Because we have over 200,000 registered nonprofits in South Africa, you really need to stand out online, and you need to put the effort into something that you own, and that's your website and your email marketing list. Still, to date, there has never been a more powerful tool of marketing, not just for nonprofits, but for the globe, for every industry, than email marketing. And it's something that you need to walk a journey with. You know, online fundraising in tech is not going to be an immediate solution for your NGO. It is something that's going to be a sustainable solution long term. And so because of that, you need to put the work in now. You need to set up your systems now, and you need to spend the time now, so that in a couple months' time and in a year, it helps sustain you financially. And that's where a lot of NGOs, I feel, make some mistakes with their online fundraising, because crisis hits and then all of a sudden we have to do a Facebook campaign, or we have to get more Twitter followers, or, oh my gosh, we haven't updated our website in 10 years. Let's quickly get to that. And there's no real strategy behind it. And there's no real understanding of how the online world works. We do a lot of work with online fundraising, because we believe that if you have a clear voice online, something as simple as a Google search will bring you funding. And the reason why I can confidently say that to you is because we, through one of our other programs, which is NGO Source, we validate organizations, well, not we, Arnold validates organizations that are on this call that has received, you know, funding from international means, where you've had to go through quite a lengthy determination process. And a large portion of that is the donor in America looking at what you are doing online to trust you, to build credibility with you. I just quickly saw something about email newsletters in the chat, and yes, email marketing is a form of your newsletter. Some people call it a monthly newsletter. Some people call it an email blast, but an email subscription marketing service is something that allows you to capture people's email addresses that want to hear from you. One of the big mistakes that NGOs do when it comes to GDPR and POPI is that they capture everybody's email addresses from like a networking meeting, or They purchase donor fundraising databases, and they don't actually physically research those people on that list. Start a conversation with them one-on-one via an email, and then ask them to join their email newsletter subscription. A lot of NGOs just capture all these email addresses, put it into Clever Reach, which is a tool for email, or MailChimp. Some of you know MailChimp. You just put all those email addresses in, and then once a month you blast out a call for funding. That's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is to organically grow your email address, because even if you only have 2 people on that email subscription list, if those 2 people have expressed to you that they want to hear from you, it is the first part of the sales process done. When somebody has got 1 foot in the door, that they're saying to you, give me more info, let me read about you, let me hear about you, let me see what you do over 3 months before I give you 10 million rand. That is the ideal donor to cultivate a relationship with. But the important thing to note is that from an online fundraising point of view, you're not going to get results today. You cannot expect your crowdfunding campaign, for example, to bring in massive amounts of money if you don't have a social media audience to share the crowdfunding campaign to. And I'm going to go back to the Australian wildfires example. That was a massive crowd fundraising campaign that worked on behalf of certain NGOs. And even still, because of rules, because of laws, because nobody really knew how to cross-check this in the beginning, they never received the funding. So you need to look at your online fundraising and start small. By that, my number 1 piece of advice to you is start with your website. Make sure that you've got a content plan for your website in terms of, update your contact page, update your programs page, put a wish list. You have no idea how many companies employ CSI department representatives that just Google search for nonprofits to donate to. That's all that they do. Universities that are researching the landscape, they literally pay people to research NGOs on Google search. Well, by using Google search. If you are not updating your website, you are not going to come up in the search function. So start blogging on your website. Start telling your story on your website. Include an email subscription on your website so that if people do land on your site and they've seen your wish list and they see everything about you, they can then say, you know what, I want to subscribe to this organization. They're doing it through the correct data protection rules. And you can then capitalize on that by keeping them updated by email once a week or once a month, whatever your strategy is. Only when you've got that right do you then use social media. Only then do you take your website, put it onto Facebook, and get people to come back to your website. And there are many, many creative ways that you can do that. A lot of you may hear from people that, you know what, Facebook doesn't want you to post links on it. That takes people off the Facebook platform. True, the algorithm does work that way. But if you have an audience on Facebook that understands who you are and what you do, and they know that you're going to be sharing a link with them because you've built up some consistency in the types of posts that you make, that link will be shown to them, because the Facebook algorithm works on what your audience members do with you on Facebook and how they react to your content. So I know I'm like barreling along quite quickly. I did warn everybody that it was going to be information overload, but I am hoping that I'm planting just a couple of seeds here and there for you to just jot down and just think about it. And then, I always say Google YouTube and a Google search is your best friend as a fundraiser. There is a wealth of knowledge and tutorials for free. Somebody like us, Pambano, and somebody like TechSoup or Melanie and Calvin, we do not offer our services for free, okay? We are nonprofits, we are businesses, we need to sustain ourselves. So before you come through the levels of the likes of us, there is a wealth of information available to you for free if maybe you can't afford our services. And that to me is the beauty of tech. That's the beauty of, empowering you as a fundraiser or as an organization to say, take an hour out of your week and just focus on Google searching. Research social media tools, research email marketing. Most importantly, look at what other nonprofits in your space are doing correctly. And don't copy them, but emulate them. Have a look at how are they speaking to their audiences, when are they speaking to their audiences, and then try and tie that into your brand. If you do not have a website, or if you're using a website like a Wix or a free WordPress or the likes, that's okay. Google have also got a free website tool available, which you're welcome to contact me about, and I'll give you some more info. And it's a good starting point for you. We're not saying that you need to have this massive fancy website that maybe an organization like Cancer, for example, a very big, well-established organization, also like Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital. If you look at their websites, they've got a big website, but they've also got a big team behind them building that website. The beauty of tech and the beauty of the TechSoup program is that there are donors out there that can help you get a free site to start with, to help you grow online, so that when you are ready to purchase a big website for your organization, it's there. One more quick thing about that in online fundraising. I just want to go back to what I said previously about your URL. Your URL, I want you to think of it as your address on the internet. Okay. So I live in number 20, whatever street it is. Your URL for your website is the physical address on this information highway, which is the internet, that people know to go to. Your website that you build on that URL is like the house that you live in. Your hosting and the sort of updates to your website, the costs attached are your rates and taxes. Okay, so just remember that, because a lot of NGOs are, in my opinion, not being treated very well by some service providers because they don't understand the lingo. So your rates and taxes for your website should not cost you more than 80 Rand a month. In all honesty, you can get something as cheap as 19 Rand, you can get 45 Rand, and you can get like 79 Rand. If a website host or anybody like that is coming to your NGO and saying, you need to pay us 450 Rand a month for your rates and taxes, that's a bit suspect. You need to know the lingo, and we're happy to help talk you through that as well. But the important note about that is that the website host or whoever has donated their time to you to build your website does not own your address. Your organization owns your address. So make sure, if you do have a domain for your website, that it's in the name of the organization, preferably your chairperson, a trustee, a board member, not you as the fundraiser, not your communication intern, but it must be somebody in a board sort of position or a very, very high management position, because that is the person that ultimately takes responsibility for the domain on behalf of the organization. Remember that nobody owns a nonprofit organization. Your community does. So when you look at these kind of things, you're actually serving your community a lot better if you do keep check of where are things registered and how are they registered. Okay, thank you for the prompt, Calvin. I would have carried on talking. Digital storytelling. This is one of my favorites because, when I speak to NGOs and I see the light bulb moment happen, it makes me really happy, because I know you've all heard the term digital storytelling, and I know you're all overwhelmed. I know it. I know when you look at this, you go, how do I tell our story? What does this mean? Why is it important? Why is everybody telling me digital story, digital story? For those of you that have got NPOs, you're kind of used to digital storytelling because you do a narrative report once a month. For those of you that were on the call last week for the M&E, that's digital storytelling. You're telling a story through your M&E in terms of, what problem are you solving? How are you solving it? When do you solve it? Digital storytelling is just taking your narrative, it's taking your passion. That thing that drives you when you wake up in the morning? And I'm not talking about money to pay your rent or to buy food or anything like that. I'm talking about your humanity inside you. You know, the reason why we're all on this call is because each one of us wants to do something for our community. Doesn't matter what other people are doing, us, inside. That's your digital story. It's as simple as that. What drives you to make change in your community every single day, despite the lack of funding, despite COVID, despite, you know, your roof caving in because you've had a flood or whatever the case? What makes you get up and go and do that? And for a lot of you, that could be something as simple as when you see that young child that through your program can now finally go to school, you get that feeling inside that says, you know what, I have achieved something. Digital storytelling is taking that and putting it into words online. Digital storytelling is the emotive part behind who you are, why you do it, when you do it, why you do it. And the important thing to digital storytelling is to have a process, because I'm sure you can all tell that I'm pretty passionate about tech, but actually my core passion is online safety. You know, I cannot stand by and watch another child commit suicide and leave a note because someone has been bullying him on TikTok. That's my core digital story. That's what I get up and tell people about, because once I capture them with that, I'm then able to have their attention to say, now let me show you how our program will help you learn the rules of TikTok. Let me help your school build a learning program that you can teach your students about TikTok, and so on. So there's a lot to do with digital storytelling, and for NGOs, it is very overwhelming. And I know most of you think it has to do with, you know, creating a Facebook post or creating an email campaign. No, it's about telling your passion inside of you from an emotive point of view and then converting it into a captive audience. The reason why digital storytelling is so crucial in our landscape, and especially as fundraisers, is because, believe it or not, people don't read properly. Believe it or not, people don't understand our lingo. And also, believe it or not, people don't really care because their attention spans are too little at the moment. Even before COVID, if you just think about yourself and how you are consuming online information, there is just too much. There is no ways that in one day you can remember every single Facebook post that you have seen on your newsfeed, right? Remember that when you are wanting to tell your story online. You need to have a strategy, and you need to put yourself into the shoes of, let's say, for example, you are posting a story, a very emotive story about a young child that unfortunately has gone through a GBV incident, okay? To us, we see it every day. We have almost become desensitized to it. But the shock factor behind putting an image of a child that's been abused on social media will offend your audiences that do not understand what we're talking about. In that case, you need to have a process, you need to have a plan on how to strategically communicate to that audience member about what you see physically day to day, but in such a way that you do not shock them so much. I think the only NGO that I've seen that's been able to use the shock factor properly is Arrive Alive. And even then, they show images of cars, you know, that have been in accidents. They don't actually show humans. They don't show some of what we're currently seeing online, which baffles my brain, because I don't know why NGOs are trying to shock people so much. But I understand that it's because no one's really sat with you and said, okay, what about the people that are seeing this post of yours at 8 o'clock at night when they've had a long day at work? Are they in the right frame of mind to accept the information that you're sending to them in the right manner? So, digital storytelling. You need to also, you know, in your strategy, you need to take care of three things. Number one is do not be political. I know it's difficult for us, but sometimes online, the best thing to say is nothing at all. People do not understand your tone. They do not understand where you're coming from. They have their own things happening in their head. They may misconstrue what you're saying. So part of your digital storytelling foundation is stay away from politics, unless you are an organization like Right to Know, AfriForum, and the likes, okay? Number 2, stay away from religion. Even churches, mosques, places of faith, even they are starting to change their narrative purely because the amount of hate that they get online from opposing opinions and opposition, so to say, is just too much for them to be able to eloquently and politely explain their story. So there is a way that you can actually stay away from religion in your nonprofit, unless, of course, again, you are a church and you've got a strategy for that. And then most importantly, which I think all of you are seeing at the moment, is stay away from racism. If your organization is the likes of a Right to Know or a public protector or a political party, then yes, you are going to address these concerns. But you as a nonprofit and as a fundraiser, and this is not just on your NPO page, but on your personal account, stay away from racism, because you don't know how a potential funder could view that. As much as what you've got a story to tell, it might not be the right time to tell the story. And that's a crucial element of digital storytelling when looking at your strategy is, how are we going to tell the story? When are we going to tell the story? And why are we telling the story? Okay, what's the time? Okay, I finished in time. I was wondering if I was going to go over time, but I'm done. So now we can do questions and answers, because I know that there's going to be a lot. Where shall we start, Melanie?
Sam, can I make a suggestion? One of the questions that I see from Jessica is, Sam, could you explain what the cloud is? And I think what I would love to know, because I'm a bit of a doffy when it comes to this sort of thing. I use the stuff, but I don't really understand the mechanics of it. Can you explain the cloud to us? What is the cloud?
Sure. So the cloud is a server. Okay, let's backtrack. Have any of you got a network in your offices? And by that, I mean, it could be in your home office or it could be at your organization, where your smartphone is connected to your Wi-Fi that also is connected to your laptop, okay? So you've got one piece of a device, which is your Wi-Fi router, that connects a whole bunch of different devices to it. I want you to imagine that physical piece of that device, your Wi-Fi router, is a server. And a server is a software system that serves your computers in your network with information. It connects every single piece of computer or any hardware, your printer, whatever the case, and it runs. It's the brains behind how information gets distributed. Now, that physical server that is in your office could get into a fire. It could get wet during a storm. So what Microsoft and Google and Zoom have done is they have taken that server, they've put it into a data center, which is basically just a massive fridge, and it's huge, and they've allocated you a little slot on this massive big server that is in their data center that cannot get ruined, cannot be touched, and they've given your computer access into it. So the cloud is when you have a little piece of the Microsoft server that's at their data center. They built this massive big fridge. They've got all these massive, huge computers in, and you essentially rent a little spot on that massive big data center to house your information. And we call that the cloud. I hope that helps. I can explain it some more.
No, I think you nailed it there. And I'm sure that if anyone has further questions, they can contact any one of us offline. Probably not me. I will just refer you on to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. But please do feel free to get in touch with us. Sure. So we've got another question from Mareka from the Aquarium Foundation. What can you recommend as a great fundraising management tool / membership software for NPOs, a CRM database, and cloud? Now, I know a little bit about Mareka's question because I've been doing some work with the Aquarium Foundation. They're looking at a membership model.
Okay.
So they're looking at something that can nurture members as well as be a repository for information. Do you have any suggestions?
Sure. So many of you know Salesforce. That would be one suggestion if you have 100,000 Rand lying around. Okay, I say it as it is. It's a good tool in terms of some of the things that you need, and I'm speaking about this now because a lot of NGOs ask us about Salesforce. It can be very, very expensive depending on the consultant that you use to set it up to your needs. Okay, so disclaimer out there. It can cost you up to 100,000 Rand. So before you even go down the road of researching that and looking at Salesforce, just know that there is a hefty cost behind it, depending on the sales consultant. But Salesforce is a tool that does have some free version or capabilities on their free account that could help you. The very best tool that you can use is your website. I always tell NGOs, get yourself a good website developer and create your own CRM on your website. If you're using if you're using a website tool like WordPress, you can use WooCommerce, which is an external plugin, and you can build a membership and a loyalty program on your very website that you own. Yes, you'll have to pay a subscription to WooCommerce, but they have all the fundraising tools set in, and the back end of your website essentially becomes your CRM. If you're wanting to go cloud, the leader from a cloud point of view at the moment is Dynamics 365, which is owned by Microsoft. So if you sign up for Office 365 and you get some free licenses, you can then tap into a further discounted rate for Dynamics on the Microsoft suite. And then you also have something like Google that can integrate with Google. You have Zoho. It's more American, maybe more a little bit European. And it does also come at an alternative cost. But again, you can actually build it to your own needs. So my suggestion is, instead of spending the money on a CRM system that some other company owns, maybe try and reach out in your network and look for a top, a website developer and ask them if they can code something for you that your organization owns. Hope that helps.
Lots to think about. Can I ask you a question added to that? The whole issue of CRMs I mean, we've got in South Africa, we've got kids, we've got you name it. I think everyone's tried everything. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to feel a little bit like it's much of a muchness. It's how much you have to spend in terms of personalization, but they effectively do offer the same tools. So it's more looking at things like pricing models, after sales service, and that type of thing, than saying this one is better than that one in terms of how it functions.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to be honest with everybody, because you'll all get to know me if you attend my talks. I say it as it is. We manage 10 countries on the African continent. Okay. We have massive programs globally, and we don't even use a CRM. What we use is our calendar, Teams, which is part of Office 365, and a basic Excel spreadsheet. Because in my mind, if you've got a membership sort of platform and you're looking at getting 500 members, okay, let's say that's your cap, 500 members to pay you. You don't need to spend 100,000 Rand on a tool to just serve those 500. There is a way that you actually can put it on the back end of your website and even just start off by using a basic Excel spreadsheet. Because essentially, all that a CRM system does is send you a fancy notification to say, it's time to phone Sam to find out how she's doing, maybe ask for some more money or send through some M&E. So there is a way that you can actually start small, set it up with a tool like Teams, which is available for free, use your calendar, really put in a strategy behind the scenes that, yes, it does take a lot of work, but you don't need to pay a lot of money for a subscription until you figured out why you want the CRM. Because I find that a lot with NGOs where they, only after they've put the money into a software program do they realize, oh, actually, that's not what I wanted the software for. I need it for something else. So trust me when I tell you, one of my favorite tools and one of the most powerful is Excel. It's the most powerful tool available for you to do anything from M&E to you name it. Try something on Excel and see if that works, to just help lay a strategy of what you want the CRM for, and then have a look at the likes of a Microsoft or a Google. You know, what are their complementary programs attached to their cloud?
Right. Because it is very confusing, you know, especially, I don't know, I can probably speak for some of the people in the room, and this is not my strong suit. And you get bombarded with things from all angles, and you just don't know what the right thing is. And should we have the Rolls Royce or will the Bucky do?
It's up to your needs. I mean, I think the number one thing that your NGO needs to spend money on is accounting. You have to have a bookkeeper or an accountant or an auditor. Okay, don't go for freebies. You must pay for that, because it is crucial, not just for your fundraising, but for every other area. So if you are wanting to adopt a QuickBooks or a Sage, yes, you can get it for free, but you might actually have to pay somebody to input the data for you. So I always say, if you're looking at your budget and if you're planning for the next 10 years and you want to, you know, start building up your tech, because cloud can come to you now for free, use the free tools. Don't pay for your operating software if you don't have to, but invest in something financially driven. So an accounting package, somebody to do that work with you or to even advise you, and then look at your CRM, because there's no point in spending 5,000 Rand a month on CRM and then you don't even have an invoicing system. You're still using Excel to invoice people. Like, it makes no sense. Just use Excel then for your CRM and link it together. So there's a lot of ways to look at it, but it essentially comes down to, why do you need the CRM and what other programs are you going to integrate into it as to which one to go for.
Sam, can I ask a question? Let's go back to the storytelling bit. You know, we've been advocating, and I'm an advocate for it, that the best ambassador and the best marketer for your organization's success of the impact of your programs is the beneficiaries. But it's such a difficult fine line, because unless you can bring the beneficiaries into the world of the donors in the public space, especially when you're trying to raise money from individuals, it's such an ethical and difficult fine line, because I agree with you when you're saying, you know, we can't exploit children, and you know, that horrid photograph that everyone uses with a child with flowers on their face freaks me out. But in a market like the US, it brings in money.
Yeah.
So from it, and given your background and where you've come from and who you've worked with and the people you know, how do we get around that? Because society feeds on that. They feed on those. I mean, look at the wildfires in Australia. You know, the video of the poor koala that hadn't drunk for 7 days, that came up to a firefighter for water. That raised, if you look at their stats, their money came flying in within minutes of that being posted on CNN. Look at BLM now, all the movements throughout the world that are talking about human rights, that are jumping on the BLM bandwagon after George Floyd's death. So what is your advice to fundraisers, who generally are the ones who have to come up with the campaigns? And the other challenge we have is that when our competitors show the face of the poor starving child or the poor dying animal, you know, the boards are the first ones to say, why aren't we doing that? So how do we use evidence and data and expertise to back up the argument that we have to be sensitive?
Yeah. Look, it's ironic you asking me that question, because yesterday I joined the Community Chest Western Cape chat. And a very similar topic was raised, and I thoroughly enjoyed that, because I believe that we as nonprofits need to adopt the voice to our donors that actually they are our partners. And I think collectively, if we all came together and said, you know what, we actually don't want to share these photos anymore, or we want to change the way the landscape is conceived, then we can go back to our donors and say, you can't tell us you're not going to pay for operational expenses. We actually need to tell you what you need to pay for, because ultimately there is nobody to replace us. And I think the starting point comes down to collaboration in the landscape. So you and Melanie have started the wave of change by just this. Bringing us all together, having a conversation, asking the questions, and the most important thing is just planting that seed so that, you know, maybe in 2 weeks' time, one of us wants to create a campaign and we go, oh, hang on, remember what we spoke about? Let me change my style of thought. From a corporate and a CSI level, I think more needs to be done in terms of holding our corporates accountable, to be honest, because if you look at the way that corporates are advertising, they themselves are using the pictures of the children to sell their product. And they don't really care. But nobody is really going to them and saying to them, actually, this is not okay. And that it has to come from us. It has to come from government. And we are seeing philanthropy change that narrative. The big issue is that NGOs don't collaborate with each other. Too many NGOs are scared that we're going to steal each other's money or whatever the case. And I mean, I sat on a stage with Trialogue about a year ago, or I think it was last year, the year before, with government and like the head of the Vodacom Foundation. And I said, why are we doing this? Like, we need NGOs to be more prevalent at these kind of conversations. But how can you expect an NGO to be here if you won't even fund their salaries, kind of a thing? So that's the one. And then just quickly to wrap that up, if you see an NGO online posting something that they shouldn't be, report it. Don't just report it to Facebook. And I'm talking about something that is really bad. Okay, let's talk about fake news. If an NGO is sharing fake news, report it, get it off the platform. But really have that conversation with somebody else, your fellow colleague in the landscape, and say, hey, could we have a quick chat over coffee and just discuss this? Because actually, if people see what your NGO is doing, it impacts our entire landscape. But then the same should be said from the bigger NGOs. Okay, I'm a huge advocate for the bigger NGOs to really collaborate with the smaller ones and to help them as well, to share their posts, to share their narratives, because the big ones can't keep on taking the market share online and dictating the rules, in my opinion. So unfortunately, I don't have a quick answer for you. It's one that we need to slowly chip away at, because it's like Black Lives Matter movement at the moment. Nobody created it. It's been there forever. So to try and change it now, that's why you're seeing mass crisis and massive emotive posting. But it doesn't mean to say that it's the correct style of posting. And we must always just rein back in and figure that out.
Cool. Thank you.
Sam, thank you so much. Thank you very much for giving up your time today to hang out with us. We really appreciate it. And I hope that we're going to be seeing more of you in the future on the tribe.
Yes, of course.
And we'll keep talking. Thank you very, very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sam. So everyone, we before we close, just to thank you formally, Sam, and say thank you very much, and to your colleagues and to your team and your organization. Sam is on the fundraising talk WhatsApp group. So, and her and Di generally answer questions. So that's a lovely platform. Reminder that this happens every week. Please invite your colleagues. It doesn't have to be fundraisers. Invite board members, invite donors. Let's grow the tribe. Our intention is to grow this tribe and create awareness. So very exciting. It came from somebody in our community that posed a question and challenged Melanie and I on a topic. So Melanie and I are going to put our thinking caps on. But next week our topic is boards and governance. And that's going to be an interesting discussion. So look out for the advert, which will go out on Monday. Please share it on social media. If you're not part of our WhatsApp group, get hold of Mel and I, and we'll put you on. Please follow us on social media, on one of our company's social medias. And we look forward to seeing you next week to grow this tribe even more and hopefully share more knowledge and impart more knowledge on effective governance and boards within the nonprofit sector. So until then, stay safe, stay warm, and we'll see you next week. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.